Morning. We're now into Daniel 4, so hopefully you've been enjoying the series so far. And we've heard from Andrew just the other day, and he talked us through Daniel 3, which was really interesting, with one of my favourite stories from the whole Bible, the Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego in the great burning furnace. One of those Sunday school tales that never ceases to become fun and exciting, which, you know, with an adult head on, must have been quite terrifying at the time. But I really like it. I was upset that I had to give it to Andrew to do the other day, but he did a great job. Anyway, today we're on Daniel 4, and we're just doing the first half of it, but this should be a fairly short reflection despite that. So it's Daniel 4 verses 1 to 18. I'll read it to you. King Nebuchadnezzar, to the peoples, nations and men of every language who live in all the world, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom, his dominion endures from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at home in my palace, contented and prosperous. I had a dream that made me afraid. As I was lying in my bed, the images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. So I commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be brought before me to interpret the dream for me. When the magicians, enchanters, astrologers and diviners came, I told them the dream, and they could not interpret it for me. Finally, Daniel came into my presence, and I told him the dream. He is called Belshazzar, after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is in him. I said, Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no mystery is too difficult for you. Here is my dream, interpret it for me. These are the visions I saw while lying in my bed. I looked, and there before me stood a tree in the middle of the land. Its height was enormous. The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it the beasts of the field found shelter, and the birds of the air lived in its branches. From it every creature was fed. In the visions I saw while lying on my bed, I looked, and there before me was a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He called in a loud voice, Cut down the tree, and trim off its branches, strip off its leaves, and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it, and the birds from its branches, but let the stump and its roots, bound with iron and bronze, remain in the ground, in the grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal, till 7 times pass by for him. The decision is announced by messengers, the holy ones declare the verdict, so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowliest of men. This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belteshazzar, tell me what it means, for none of the wise men in my kingdom can interpret it for me, but you can, because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. So that's how far we'll go today. You can read the rest of the chapter, and we'll cover that next time. But just briefly then, chapter 4 has lots of really interesting poetic and literary merits to it. If you read the commentaries, they'll tell you this is good quality writing. There's the use of the first and the third person. We'll come to the third person next time. This has all been first person today. And there's various literary structures all hidden around in it. All that's just to say that this is good Hebrew literature. And historically, actually, if you read the books about it, there's not a massive amount of reason to doubt its accuracy. It's hard to be sure, but there's not very much information about the second half of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign generally. And actually, if he got ill, you'll see next time he gets ill, you wouldn't necessarily have expected that to be widely recorded anyway. So there's nothing that really suggests that this didn't happen. It's just, therefore for us, this is kind of trustworthy stuff and well written, as you would expect if it was a first person well-written information from a king, probably written by someone on his behalf. I think there's just a couple of things I'd like to draw us to, just to think about for today. One is in verse 17, it talks about God's sovereignty versus human sovereignty, and this will be the key to the other half of the chapter, so we'll come back to this. But it says, the decision is announced by messengers. The holy ones declare the verdict, so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men. So there's definitely, as we found in the before bits of Daniel as well, there's something about God being sovereign over the whole situation. And we've been talking about this repeatedly, about how we know that God is sovereign over all our situations, especially in the light of the coronavirus that we're currently dealing with at the moment, that God is sovereign over all things. And then the second and last, if you like, thing that I wanted to draw to our attention is a lot of this literature stuff, you look out for repetition. It's slightly poetic, so you're looking out for repetition. And the thing that is repeated 3 times in the passage in verse 8, 9 and 18 is that God's Spirit is in Daniel. It says, at the end it says, but you can work it out because the Spirit of the Holy God is in you. Earlier it says, I know that the Spirit of the Holy God is in you. That's verse 9. And again, in verse 8, the Spirit of the Holy God is in him. And I guess, as well as spending our day thinking about the sovereignty of God, it might just be something to reflect on. That could it be said of us? Could it be said of Steve that the Spirit of the Holy God is in him? And if not, maybe that's something we should be praying for. In this passage, it functions because it's repeatedly made clearer and clearer and clearer over and over again that this isn't Daniel's cleverness that helps him interpret the dream, as we'll see next time. This is God's Spirit that helps him do things. And I guess that's important for us as well, to remember that, wouldn't it be great if that could be said about us? But this whole passage runs along the fact that God is sovereign, and it's only because God is in the situation that the situation resolves. It's only because God is in the person that the person can do these things. And what we need to be praying for in our situation at the moment and for the rest of our lives is that more and more God would be in us and working through us in whatever way he wants to. So that's it for today. Let me pray for you. Lord God, thank you that you are sovereign over all things, and help us to remember that and not to be fearful. But also help us to be people who you are working through. Help us to be people who allow you to work through us, and help us to always seek through prayer to be more in step with you, and that you would fill us more with your Spirit. Amen. Have a great day.